Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into something pretty interesting, I think. And we're taking a look at this YouTube video, How to Hack Your Brain to Crave Doing Hard
Oh,
Things.
yeah, I saw that one. It's from Spoonfed Study, right?
That's the one. And it all starts with this, like, really personal story. So we're going to unpack that and see what it has to say about managing dopamine,
hmm
like for productivity and all that.
He uses a pretty wild story, actually. Two brothers growing up during China's Cultural Revolution. It's crazy to think about what people went through then. Families torn apart, kids forced into hard labor.
Yeah, yeah, and get this, the older brother in the story, that's actually my dad.
Wow, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he was assigned to this brutal work, like chopping wood all day, tilling the land, you name it, he did it. But his younger brother got off a little easier. He was tending cattle, mostly. So it's kind of interesting how even within the same tough environment, their work shaped their mindsets. You know what I mean?
Totally. Like the younger brother, he just kind of settled, content with a just okay existence. But your dad, he was
Huh.
different.
Oh, yeah. He wanted more. He was determined to escape, like, his entire situation. But he knew he had to change himself first.
I can see how he'd think that. So what did he do?
Well, for starters, he taught himself to read.
Seriously. But where do you even find books back then?
He'd use anything he could get his hands on, like literally any scrap of paper. I'm talking like old newspapers, even communist propaganda pamphlets.
Wow. That's resourceful.
Right, he said those scraps were like gold to him. Every single one was a chance to learn, a chance to grow.
Makes you think about how we take things for granted sometimes, huh?
Yeah, it really does. And this kind of leads into the whole core idea of the video, this idea about dopamine as fuel.
Oh, yeah, the whole dopamine thing. It's everywhere these days.
Well, so the video says that basically we all have this limited amount of dopamine, right? And it's like energy for motivation and action. The thing is, we waste so much of it.
On things that feel good in the moment, but don't really get us anywhere in the long run.
Exactly. Like, when was the last time you spent hours scrolling on your phone or binging Netflix when you had a ton of stuff to do?
Oh, don't get me started on that. I'm definitely guilty of that.
We all are. It's like we have these two furnaces inside us.
Two furnaces. I'm not sure I follow.
One's for waste, all those distractions and instant gratification stuff. And the other one, that's for purpose.
Yeah.
It's the fuel for hard work, the long-term goals, the things that really matter.
Okay, I get it now.
Yeah.
So, like, our dopamine is the fuel, and we get to choose which furnace we feed.
Precisely. And these days, it feels like the furnace of waste has an endless buffet, right?
Yeah, there's always something grabbing our attention. Always. So how do we even start to manage that?
Well, the video uses this analogy about escaping Mount Everest to explain it.
Escaping Mount Everest. Okay, that sounds a bit dramatic.
Well, think about it. If you're stranded on top of Mount Everest, you only have so many supplies.
Right?
Your whole focus is just on survival, getting to base camp.
Right, you can't get distracted. There's literally no other option.
Exactly. Now, most of us aren't facing like a literal life or death situation on Mount Everest, obviously. But the principle still applies. It's about being intentional with our environment, making it harder to give in to those distractions.
So instead of having your phone right there while you're working, you put it in another room. Something like that.
Exactly. You're basically creating a situation where focusing on your goal is the easiest path. It's like choosing the path of least resistance, if you will.
I could see how that Mount Everest mindset could be useful.
Right. Especially for those big, challenging goals. But it doesn't have to be that extreme?
No, I guess not. Like, even small changes can make a difference. So, okay, we're minimizing distractions, making success the easiest option. What else?
Well, now we get into the meat of it. The 5 steps to actually managing dopamine. The first one is awareness.
Awareness. Okay, so that's like figuring out where dopamine's going right now, what furnaces we're feeding.
That's it. We need to, track our habits and pay attention to what triggers those dopamine rushes. Basically, figure out where it's all going. But then what do? The video mentions elimination, but that seems intense.
Yeah, like, do we have to give up all the fun stuff?
That's what I was thinking.
No, it's not about deprivation. It's more about being intentional, making conscious choices.
So, like, maybe you don't completely ditch social media, but you set some limits.
Right. Or you replace, like, mindless scrolling with something more fulfilling, like reading or learning something new.
I see. So swapping out those waste activities for something that actually feeds the purpose furnace
hmm
makes sense. What's next?
Well, step 3 is all about timing. You know how some mornings you wake up feeling super productive, and then other days you can barely drag yourself out of bed?
Oh, tell me about it. I definitely have those days. What's that about?
Well, it's because our dopamine levels naturally change throughout the day. They tend to be highest in the morning. That's why the video suggests, like, tackling your hardest tasks first thing.
Oh, so you're riding that dopamine wave, so to speak. Clever.
Exactly. And they even have this 5-minute rule. It's like sometimes even starting a task feels overwhelming.
Yeah.
But if you just commit to 5 minutes, often that's enough to build momentum.
Yeah, it's like tricking your brain into being productive. Love that. Okay, so we've got awareness, elimination, timing. So that's step 4.
Step 4 is rewards, but not just any rewards. It's about using them strategically to reinforce those positive behaviors. Remember how your dad found satisfaction in those scraps of paper?
Yeah, because they were scarce, right. Each one was like, it represented something valuable to him, knowledge, freedom, a way out.
Exactly. That's where this whole Pavlovian conditioning thing comes in. Like Pavlov's dogs, they learn to drool at the sound of a bell.
Okay, I remember learning about that, but I'm not a dog.
Yeah. No, but you can do the same thing with your brain. You can
Okay,
train
cool.
it to, like, crave the things that'll help you reach your goals.
So if I reward myself after doing something tough, I can make my brain enjoy those tasks more.
Exactly. It's like hacking your own reward system. You're not just relying on willpower, which, let's be honest, can be pretty unreliable.
This is getting good. What's the last step?
The last step is recovery.
Yeah.
We can't just, keep going and going without a break. Rest and recovery are essential to replenish that dopamine and prevent burnout. Think of it like recharging your batteries.
Makes sense. You can't run on empty. Okay, so we've got all 5 steps, but I'm curious, how did my dad actually apply these concepts in his own life? I mean, did he really create a Mount Everest situation to escape his circumstances?
Well, not literally, of course, but he did make some pretty big choices. Like, remember how he was determined to learn English? He knew textbooks wouldn't be enough, so he took a huge leap of faith. He signed up for this intensive English program in America.
Whoa, seriously, he just left everything and went to a country where he could barely even speak the language.
He did, with just a few dollars in his pocket. Talk about creating a Mount Everest situation, right?
That's intense. So he just immersed himself in the language completely, no escape route.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it worked. Being surrounded by English all the time, 24/7, it forced him to use it constantly. He had to learn to survive. It's like a crash course in dopamine management.
That's incredible. He really used his circumstances to fuel his learning. But was that that level of intensity, was it really necessary? I mean, not everyone can just, pick up and move to another country to learn something new.
Yeah, that's true. It's definitely not the only way. It's more about the principle behind it.
Yeah.
Like creating an environment where succeeding, achieving your goal becomes the most appealing option.
So it's about being more strategic and thoughtful about our environment, not necessarily making these huge life changes.
Exactly. It's about finding what works for you. Maybe for someone, it's putting their phone away while they're working to cut back on screen time, or using one of those website blockers to avoid those tempting social media sites.
It's like identifying your furnaces of waste and making them harder to reach. Kind of like how my dad got rid of all the junk food in the house when he was trying to eat healthier.
Yeah.
Like out of sight, out of mind, right?
Right. And it's not just about our physical environment either. It's our mental and emotional space too. Are we surrounding ourselves with people who support our goals?
Yeah.
Or, people who kind of pull us in different directions?
It's about having a support system that aligns with your purpose, right? Like if everyone around you is always indulging in those waste activities, it's going to be way harder to resist.
Absolutely. And speaking of resisting, remember that step about rewards? The strategic use of rewards. Let's talk about that a bit more.
Yeah, I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around that whole Pavlovian conditioning thing. It sounds a little, I don't know, brainwashy to me, but I'm open to hearing more.
Well, think about it this way. We already use this principle all the time. We just don't realize it. Like when you reward yourself with, I don't know, a piece of chocolate after a good workout.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like that little piece of chocolate suddenly tastes amazing because I earned it.
Exactly.
Mm.
You've paired that feeling of accomplishment with the reward, the chocolate.
Yeah.
And over time, your brain starts to connect exercise with pleasure. It's not manipulation, it's understanding how your brain works and using it to your advantage.
So it's like hacking your own motivation system. Instead of just relying on willpower, which can be so up and down, you're creating this positive feedback loop that keeps you going.
You got it. It's like in the video, they talk about playing this game Clash Royale, I think it was, after doing their daily planks. It's not really about the game itself, it's the feeling of satisfaction that comes with achieving their goal.
So they're basically turning exercise into a game. That's pretty smart. And, it reminds me of my dad and how much he loves to learn. He always talks about how, when he was a kid, books were so scarce that it made him appreciate them even more.
Perfect example. The limited access made knowledge more valuable to him. Like he trained his brain to find joy in learning itself.
And to think, it all started with those, like, scraps of paper. He wasn't focused on how hard things were. He was focused on what those scraps represented. They were a way to escape, to build a better future.
He found his furnace of purpose and just, fed it with everything he had. That's what makes his story so inspiring. It's a reminder that even when things are tough, we have a choice in how we respond. We can dwell on the negative or we can search for opportunities.
We can feed the furnace that helps us grow, that pushes us towards the life we want. But what about his younger brother, the one who stayed behind and, took care of the cattle? Did he ever find his own furnace of purpose?
Unfortunately, not really. You see, your dad embraced the challenge, but
Yeah.
his brother, he just kind of drifted. Never really pushed himself or tried anything new, just settled for a life that was like just okay.
So he never really tapped into those dopamine reserves, huh? Never found that thing that really, like, lit him up.
Yeah, and that can be a slippery slope.
Hmm.
When you're not actively going after something that's meaningful, it's easy to fall into those patterns of instant gratification, distractions and all that.
So what happened? Did things turn out okay for him?
Sadly, no, not really. He actually struggled with a gambling addiction for years. He saw it as like a way to escape a quick hit of dopamine, I guess.
That's really sad to hear. He was searching for something, but in all the wrong places.
It's like he was feeding that furnace of waste without even realizing it. And, well, eventually caught up with him. He had a few strokes and spent the last few years in a nursing home.
Makes you think, huh? Like, what if he'd found his own Mount Everest? What if he'd taken on those challenges and, used his dopamine for something that mattered? What kind of life could he have had?
We'll never know, will we?
Yeah.
But it's a powerful reminder, I think. We always have a choice. Let our circumstances control us or rise above them.
Choose to feed the furnace that helps us grow, that leads us to a life that's full of purpose.
It doesn't have to be about, like, massive success or anything.
Right.
It's more about the journey, the small wins that keep you moving forward, like your dad with those scraps of paper.
Yeah. He found purpose in the most unlikely place. And it shows, that we all have that potential.
Absolutely. We all have that power to hack our brains, manage our dopamine, and create a life that's truly ours. A life that reflects our values and what we want to achieve.
It's not always going to be easy. We're going to slip up, get distracted. Those furnaces of waste, they're always going to be there calling to us.
That's true, but it's about getting back on track, learning from those slip-ups and, trying to make choices that support our goals.
So as we wrap up our deep dive here, I want to leave you with this. What furnace of purpose are you trying to fuel? What really matters to you?
What's that one small change you could make today to start using your dopamine better, more effectively?
Maybe it's setting aside 15 minutes for focused work, or finally unsubscribing from those emails that just clutter up your inbox.
Or maybe it's something bigger, like finally signing up for that class you've been thinking about, or starting that project you've been putting off. Whatever it is, take that first step. Embrace the challenge.
You might surprise yourself with what you can achieve when you really start using the power of your own mind.
And don't forget, you don't have to go it alone. There are so many resources out there, communities, strategies, all kinds of things to help you on your journey.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into dopamine and motivation. Until next time, keep those dopamine furnaces burning bright.